The wind howled across the frozen wasteland like a wounded beast. Snow stretched endlessly in every direction, a white graveyard under a colorless sky. Beneath the ice, buried in silence and time, lay a man the world believed lost. He was not. Sleeping. He was waiting. Decades earlier, when the world was tearing itself apart in fire and blood, this man had made a choice to fall so others could rise. His name was Steve Rogers, and history would come to know him as Captain America. But before he became a symbol, before the shield, before the legends, he was just a boy who refused to give up. Chapter 1. The boy from Brooklyn, Steve Rogers, grew up in Brooklyn during the Great Depression, where hunger was common and hope was rare. He was small, sickly, and weak. His body betrayed him at every turn. Asthma stole his breath, infections stole his strength, and bullies stole his peace. Yet something inside Steve never broke. While other boys learned how to throw punches, Steve learned how to stand back up. His father died when he was young. His mother followed years later, leaving Steve alone in a world that felt too big and too cruel. He worked whatever jobs he could find, sketching in notebooks during stolen moments, drawing heroes who looked nothing like him, tall, strong, fearless. But what Steve lacked in size, he made up for in courage. When war erupted across Europe and the world cried out for soldiers, Steve didn't hesitate. He tried to enlist in the army again and again, rejected every time. Too small, too weak, unfit for service. Each rejection cut deep, but he never blamed the army, he blamed himself. Until one man saw what others COULDN single quotes T. Chapter 2. The Choice. Dr. Abraham Erskine was not impressed by muscles. He was impressed by character. When he met Steve Rogers, he didn't see a fragile body. He saw a man who would dive on a grenade to save others. A man who hated bullies not because they hurt him, but because they hurt the helpless. Erskine offered Steve a choice. Become part of a secret experiment. The super soldier program. The risks were immense. Failure could mean death. Steve didn't ask about survival. He asked one thing: will it help me protect people? That was answer enough. Chapter 3. The birth of a legend. The laboratory lights burned bright. Machines hummed like thunder. Scientists watched with held breath as Steve was strapped into the chamber. Serum flowed into his veins. Pain unlike anything he'd known tore through his body. His bones burned. His muscles screamed. His heart felt like it might burst. And then silence. When the chamber doors opened, Steve Rogers was gone. In his place stood a man reborn, taller, stronger, faster. His frail frame transformed into living power, but his eyes were unchanged. Still kind, still humble. Still Steve, but triumph was short-lived. A Hydra spy assassinated Dr. Erskine moments later, stealing the last vial of serum. The dream of an army of super soldiers died with him. Steve became the only one. Chapter 4. A Star-Spangled Symbol. The military didn't know what to do with him. Instead of sending him to the front lines, they dressed him in red, white, and blue and sent him on tour. He became a living poster, selling war bonds, performing for cheering crowds. Steve smiled for the cameras, but inside, he felt like a fraud. While others fought and died, he posed. Until the day he learned his best friend, Bucky Barnes, was missing. In action. That was the moment Steve stopped asking permission. Chapter 5. The First. Battle. Armed with nothing but determination and a shield made of experimental metal, Steve stormed an enemy base alone. He didn't plan, he acted. Bullets flew. Explosions shook the earth. Steve moved like a force of nature, smashing through Hydra's defenses, freeing prisoners, and proving finally what he was meant to be. When he emerged from the smoke with soldiers at his back, the world saw something new. Not a mascot. A leader. Chapter 6. Captain America. They gave him a new name, Captain America. With his shield and a small unit of elite fighters, Steve led missions across enemy territory. Hydra's leader, the terrifying Red Skull, sought to reshape the world through fear and power. But Steve fought for something else. Hope. Where Hydra burned villages, Captain America freed them. Where fear spread, he stood unshaken. Yet victory demanded sacrifice. Chapter 7. The fall. Hydra's final weapon was unstoppable. Plane armed with enough power to destroy cities. Steve knew what he had to do. There was no time to land. No chance. To escape. As the aircraft descended toward the icy north, Steve spoke into the radio, calm despite everything. "I'm sorry, but this is the end of the line." He guided the plane into the ice, saving millions at the cost of his own life, or so the world believed. Chapter 8. The Man Out of Time. Decades passed. Then, one day, ice cracked. Steve woke to a world he didn't recognize: bright screens, towering buildings, unfamiliar faces. The war was over. Everyone he knew was gone or old. He had won and lost everything, but Steve Rogers did not retreat into grief. He adapted. Chapter 9. A new war. The threats were different now: aliens, machines, shadows within governments themselves. Steve joined other heroes, forming a team not of soldiers but of guardians. Though surrounded by gods and geniuses, Steve remained their moral center. When others argued strategy, he asked what was right. When power tempted them, he reminded them of responsibility. Chapter 10. The cost of freedom. The world demanded control over its heroes. Laws were written. Lines were drawn. Steve refused. Freedom, he believed, could not exist under fear. The shield cracked literally and figuratively as friends became enemies. Steve chose principle over popularity, truth over comfort, even when it cost him everything. Chapter 11. The final stand. When the universe itself faced annihilation, Steve stood once more on a broken battlefield, shield shattered, body bruised. Hope fading. He tightened the strap on his arm. Alone. Or so it seemed. He fought not because he believed he'd win, but because giving up was never an option. Chapter 12. The last mission. In the end, Steve was given a chance not to fight, but to live. He returned what was borrowed. Set the timeline right. And finally, after a lifetime of war, he chose peace. Steve Rogers danced. Epilogue. The shield lives on. Captain America was never the serum. Never the shield. Never the uniform. He was a man who stood up when the world told him to stay down. A man who believed that one voice, one act of courage, could change everything. And somewhere in the quiet corners of history, his legacy still whispers, "I can do this all day."